The Broadbeams awoke under the roots of Mount Dolmed too. There they built the great city of Belagost, the twin of Nogrod, under the mountain's northeastern side. The Broadbeams, like no other clan, know how to mine for iron and fashion steel. They are unparalleled armorers and weaponsmiths when it comes to objects made of steel. Telchar, the master smith, was from the city of Belagost, though he often travelled to and dwelt in Nogrod, a little way to the south, whence his mother had been born, and so the Firebeards often claim him for their own. But he was no Firebeard, and in appearance he took after his father's side. Like his fellow Broadbeams, he had brown hair and a brown beard, a deep hazelnut in colour, until they turned grey when he entered his 220s, and then snowy white when he was well over 250. The Broadbeams have fair skin that is very rarely rosy. The hair on their heads and in their beards is thick, long, and all hues of brown, from deep mahogany to sultry hazel. As are their eyes, though a few of them have blue eyes, from sky to sapphire to ocean deep, though never green. Some have grey owls, but none black. They never braid their hair or beards, the latter of which are usually wide, thick, and luscious, though very seldom as long as we wear ours, which they consider uncouth and barbaric. The hair on the tops of their heads and in their beards varies in composition from straight to wavy to somewhat curly. Telchar has been called the greatest smith of all time, save perhaps Fëanor of the Deep Elves and certainly Aule and others of the Ainur. He was apprenticed to Gamil Zirak, another Broadbeam and great smith in his time, who was said to have made the first weapons of war for the Elf King Thingol. Telchar made the knife Angrist, the blade that cut a Silmaril from Morgoth's iron crown, and which could cut through steel as if it were butter. He was also the one who fashioned the sword Narsil for Elendil, High King of the Dunedain, and the realms of Arnor and Gondor. He was fashioned the dragon helm of Dorlomin, worn by Turin the Dragon Slayer, but this was made in the year 260 of the first age, during one of his residencies in Nogrod. The helm was made for Azaghal, the lord of Belagost, as payment for being allowed to leave that great city in favour of Norgrod, whither Telchar moved to master the art of goldsmithing. Azaghal did not want to let Telchar go, because he depended on the smith for his great arms and armour that the great artisan made for the king's army and for the king personally. Telchar made the helm with gold decorations and a gold dragon, so that Azaghal would both be rewarded for his kindness in letting him go and would see the things he'd mastered. The helm was so heavy, made by a dwarf for a dwarf, so that most elves and men could only try to wear it. It was engraved with runes of power that made its wearer immune to dragon fire. Later Azaghal gave it to the elf prince Maedhros, as the latter had saved him from an ambush by orcs on the dwarf road in Beleriand. Maedhros in turn gave it to Hador Lorindol, whom he made his vassal and to whom he gave the lordship of Dorlomin. It is said that Hador and his son Galdor the Tall, the grandson and great-grandson of Hurin Thalion and Turin Turambar, were some of the very few non-dwarves who could wear it. Indeed, the Broadbeams of Belagost invented dragon helms, which had faceplates like to dwarven faces. These helms, and especially their faceplates, and the runes of magic engraved upon the helms, protected the wearers from dragon fire, and so it was that King Azaghal and his sturdy household guard, were the only ones who could withstand the onslaught of Glaurung, the father of dragons, in the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, the battle of unnumbered tears. The dragon rolled and trampled over the great king of Belagost, but under his belly Azaghal managed to draw his sword, a dagger to most non-dwarfs, and stick it in the belly of the beast. Thus grievously injured, the worm fled in pain. Azaghal was mortally wounded, but his warriors picked up the fallen king and carried him off the battlefield in solemn procession, and not even bothering to look at any of their enemies. They sang as they marched, and so great was their quiet rage, so deep and awe-inspiring the dirge they sang, that none would dare disturb their train. Did you know that the Broadbeams of Belagost invented mail armor? Well, they did, and until they came here to Khazad-dûm after the end of the first stage, we had not heard of it. And just like the Noldor before they came back to Middle-earth, had only used cuirasses of solid metal. Alas, when the great worm and Calagon the Black fell upon Beleriand at the end of the War of Wrath, and rent that land asunder, making all of it but parts of Osirian, which most now called by its other name, Lindon, and parts of the Ered Luin, the Blue Mountains, all but that sank under the waves of Belegair, the great sea, including the dwarven cities of the Firebeards and Broadbeams, Nogrod and Belagost, which too sank under the sea and were inundated. This was a great tragedy for the Firebeards and Broadbeams, of course, but for us in Khazad-dûm, a great boon, as our refugee kinsmen came east and were admitted here. Not all of them, for many former citizens of Nogrod and Belagost made settlements, no more than villages and hamlets, but still splendid homes, out in the parts of the Blue Mountains that still remained above the waves. Now let me tell you about the other 4 dwarven clans, who awoke to the east of our beloved Misty Mountains, and thus were not involved in the War of the Jewels with the world's dark enemy, Morgoth. First, let us mention the Stonefoots. These dwarves of fair skin but very dark brown hair and beard hail from the grey mountains to the north. Their hair greys sooner than for any other clan, most often before they have reached their 110th winter. Their hair and beards are always straight and never curly. They are most often grey, blue, or green-eyed. The Stonefoots of the Grey Mountains have the finest masons in all the world, surpassing even ours in Khazad-dûm, and certainly all others in all the worlds. It is said that if a Stonefoot is not born with a chisel in his hand, he is handed one by his father sooner than he can walk. Oh, lad, you should see the great arches and fine turrets both below and above ground, and grand halls and elaborate armories of the halls of the Grey Mountains. None can copy their craft, and none can bring those halls to ruin, save perhaps a dragon or an army of dragons. You know, in masonry we dwarves surpass all the other races, but the Stonefoots are the most accomplished of us all. They can make a book out of sheer granite, which pages, through their magic, are pliant and bend as if they were made by parchment, and on those pages they carve the sheerest runes of the Angerthas Dairon in their own mode, that of the Grey Mountains, and fill the furrows with purest Ithilden that we send them, so that on all days you can read those books with both your eyes and your hands. But on Durin's Day, which they call Father's Day, after what they call their ancestor, the runes of the words shine with the light of the moon. Then there are the Ironfists of the Iron Mountains, the Iron Hills. Their ancestors were placed in the mountain underneath the Iron Hills, but as it does not extend above the ground, nor contain any useful or beautiful minerals or gems, the Ironfists delved into the hills above, and found there a wealth of the metal which they used to give the hills their name. The way the Broadbeams specialize in the smelting and refinement of iron to make it harden steel, the Ironfists dedicated their entire beings to the ferrous material itself. There is no dwarf better at the working of pig iron than an Iron Fist. Indeed, they were the first ones to discover its use, and when they, during their travels, for they were always a roving breed, they encountered other dwarves, they shared their knowledge with them. Of all dwarves, the Iron Fists have been the least inclined to hoard wealth or jealously guard their secrets, save our language only, like any sensible dwarf. And thanks to them, the culture and smithcraft of all dwarven kind developed greatly. They prefer to make simple items, but of great beauty, and at any rate they love the hearth and dinner table as much as the smithy. Strangely enough, dwarven women of the Ironfists are more often than in other clans beardless, and there are also more of them than in any other clan. Having said this, their women are as adventurously inclined as their menfolk, and are often found wandering the roads with them. Both men and women of their clan have the greatest interest in the culinary arts of any dwarves, both for making the modest fare for their journeys. They are said to be the ones to have invented cram, and for more sumptuous banquets. Nothing as fancy as the Eldar or Dunedain, of course, but plenty fancy for us dwarfs. As with the rest of the clans, the favourite delicacy of most is boar roasted on the spit, and they do theirs with honey and rosemary. They are also said to brew the best mead, though I think that we make it here in Khazad-dûm, and that beats theirs hammers down, though I'll get to the various culinary traditions of the clans in a minute.